Hey folks, I just wanted to give you a heads up that this video is going to be a little bit heavier than my usual. I'll talk about a lot of heavier subjects than normal, so just be warned. Hello fellow psychonauts, it's me, Dolo, and today's video is going to be a spicy one. I'm going to talk about how I think DMT is awesome and Joe Rogan isn't, and how this dissonance harmed the image of the conversation around DMT. First things first, disclaimers. I want to make my intentions for this video very clear from the beginning in the hopes of minimizing people mischaracterizing my position. Not eliminating, just minimizing. I'm going to be stating my opinions on what I like about DMT and I do not like about Joe Rogan, specifically his podcast. This is not to shame anyone who enjoys his content or to cancel him or whatever. Criticism does not equal cancellation. Also, just because I think DMT/psychedelics are bon does not mean that I am advocating for you personally to ingest the substance. It's not for everyone. I dare say it isn't even for most people. And with that being said, let's briefly discuss why DMT is thebomb.com. Do people even say that anymore? So DMT is absolutely incredible. It is one of the few things I think that actually exceeds its hype. Although I don't think it is ineffable, I do think it is effable. Smoking DMT feels like taking 1,000 hits of acid, but instead of it coming on within an hour, it propels you into the peak within 30 seconds. It is very jarring to say the least, going from completely sober to higher than you've ever thought possible in such a short time span. The experience is different for everyone, but in my experience, it begins with a high-pitched shepherd's tone and all the colors of the room vivify. What sounds like a chorus of literal angels lifts your consciousness out of your body and out of the room. And almost immediately, the connection and memory to the earthly life of living in a capitalist dystopia vanishes. It just washes away as you are brought into what I like to call Atlantis. No, not literally Atlantis, but a world of opalescent beauty that radiates life all around you. You're terrified naturally, but it is a state of pure love and wholeness. Elves emerge from the palace walls and offer their reassurance. It's okay, you've got this, buddy. You've always known what to do. You are us and we are you. And they gently let you back down into your room like setting a baby down into a crib, whispering their goodbye. We'll always be here when you're ready. Over the next 10 minutes, all the visions and sensations quietly slips away, and you're just left there in your messy apartment with bills to pay, dishes in the sink, and several mall toilets to scrub at 7 a.m. the next morning. Wow, what an absolutely sublime experience. And to think, I found out about this substance and experience from this fucking guy. The very first time I was introduced to the existence of this psychedelic was through an audio clip of the JRE. My buddy held up his phone and through this tinny little speaker I can hear a voice of a dude saying, "You burst into an incorporeal realm where there are aliens, beings made out of light that tell you your life isn't real and this is the true reality." Naturally, I was intrigued and I wanted to try it. Except I was like 15. So it wasn't until much later that I found out that the voice was the fucking Fear Factor guy. About the time I was in college, I was really into psychedelics. The first week in my res, I began to listen to Terrence McKenna to get perspective on the psychedelic experiences I had. In the last semester of my 1.5-year college degree, I began to get into the Joe Rogan experience as I thought it was awesome to have some contemporary psychedelic conversation. Dennis McKenna, Hamilton Morris, and the Paul Stamets episode was just a classic. I honestly still love how unfiltered it all feels, like real in-depth conversations, you know? But then I listened to talks with more of the fringe psychedelic figures, like Rupert Sheldrake and Graham Hancock. I mean, I was into anyone who would talk about psychedelics, though even then, at the time, I had to admit they were making some pretty big fucking claims with little evidence that was also denounced by the larger scientific communities. But that's kind of the thing with with the Joe Rogan experience, right? We are supposed to open-mindedly and critically grow as we listen to a lot of different voices. That being said, I really only was interested in the psychedelic talks. Slowly I realized how fucked up much of his fan base is. Like so many people commenting calling Adam Conover a beta for pointing out that alpha male ideology is bullshit. That gross brand of masculinity that is all too common in the UFC manosphere. But what really did it for me is one particular guest that I don't hear anyone talk about. Just a heads up, this has to do with the sexual exploitation of minors, so if you don't want to hear about that, you can skip to this time mark. So in 2018, Joe had Ted Nugent on his show, and this was just after I heard he had a song called Jailbait. As the title implies, the song is about kidnapping and raping 13-year-olds. The lyrics are in first person of a child predator and makes light of the situation. But that's just a song, I hear you say. You really think this big game hunting, Trump supporting, racist fuck is being artistic? Then give your head a shake. Ted Nugent's thing was adopting children to abuse. He literally bragged about gaining several parents' approval to sexually abuse their child.
Ted charmed the girl's parents right along with his teenage lovers. And in the case of Pele, her mother signed papers making Ted her legal guardian.
I got the stamp of approval of their parents. Because they figured better Ted Nugent than some drug-infested punk in high school.
I don't know. Maybe Joe should do just a little bit of background search on his guests. Just a little.
Adopted my girlfriend? Have you read that one?
I did read that one. I forgot about it.
What the fuck? Absolutely
I don't think that's how it
absurd.
works.
That's not...
I don't think it makes it easier to fuck them once you adopt them.
I got the stamp of approval of their parents.
I commented a brief version of this on the YouTube clip, and I was hoping for some community sympathy or dialogue or something. And instead, the response I got, I kid you not, haunts me to this day. I hardly want to say it because it's so disgusting, but here it goes. The reply I got was, peanut butter jealous. I have been eternally disturbed ever since. How could I not ask myself at this point, what the fuck kind of fan base is this? Aren't there any ethical standards here? Doesn't anyone care?
Ted is the spokesperson for the right. And you would get a mischaracterization of him because of some of the things he says. But if you meet him like in person to person, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
Watching him have the most deplorable guests over and over and over again. Ben, if the water rises, just move. Shapiro. Jordan, the patriarchy doesn't exist. Peterson. Steven fucking Crowder. And the king of conspiracy theory, and by king, I mean person who yells really loud, Alex Jones.
Bullshit! They're killing already born babies! Stop fucking lying!
These are not interesting or thoughtful thinkers. These are people who build their careers as reactionaries to any progressive conversation. The list of terrible guests he had on his show is so long that this video would take all day for me to go over them. Though this video by the Serfs does a really good job of critiquing JRE. It's definitely worth a watch if you're a fan of the podcast. It should go without saying that these podcasts aren't debates. Joe doesn't invite these guests on to push back against their awful and easily disprovable talking points. As if Joe Rogan would be the guy to do that anyways. I mean, he does push back sometimes, but for me, that does not outweigh supporting and platforming these people. Joe Rogan is a centrist, people. He listens to all sides of the political spectrum because he is so unbiased. Yes, I totally don't see a bias in which guests he chooses to platform on his show. But here are some of the views that Joe Rogan has that I take special grievance with. Transphobia. He uses sports as a way to advocate against trans rights and making false claims that hormone therapy is irreversible damage. Not true. He is wrong and you should seek an expert opinion. Fat phobia. Trashing plus-size models, calling them names, and getting angry that these people allegedly choose to have these body types. Also perpetuating the myth that being fat is always unhealthy and unrespectable.
New standards of beauty. You go, you giant gelatinous bag of meat and tissue. No, that's a dying person who's addicted to food. She doesn't want to look like that.
And his anti-socialist rhetoric, mischaracterizing socialism as a system based on handouts.
The reality is some people have a far easier path.
Absolutely.
And some people have a far more difficult path. But you have to deal with the hand you're given. If life is a game, and while I'm not saying it's a game, it is life, but it's similar to a game in that you're dealt a set of cards. There's some benefit in being born with a shitty hand of cards.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There really is a motivational benefit for sure.
Gumption.
Then looking at Skid Row and saying, if only there was a system that could help these people.
They just set up tents, and then the cops kick them out, and they just come back and they move, and then they come back. But they make these encampments. Again, I don't know what's the solution.
Yeah,
No idea.
If there was only a system that could eliminate homelessness.
It really is a motivational benefit for sure.
Gumption.
And most recently, he is now advocating for ivermectin as an alternative to the COVID vaccines. It is so incredibly irresponsible to be leading your stands toward anti-vaccination. This video does a really good job of breaking all this down. So all of this was enough for me to realize that maybe Joe Rogan isn't where it's at. Whenever I try bringing up DMT in conversation, which is less often now, the most common response I get is, you mean the Joe Rogan drug? People strongly associate DMT with the JRE now, and this was accelerated by the wave of have you tried DMT memes.
DMT, dimethyltryptamine.
So annoying. I hardly bring it up to people anymore because I don't want to be associated with Joe Rogan and his conservative friends. It was also another factor to what led me to believe that psychedelics won't save us. Yes, they can make a person more open-minded, but open-mindedness in the company of conservatives leads to science denial, hating poor people, and just general American exceptionalism. To be fair, Joe does believe in climate science and does not share the views of a lot of his guests. But for onlookers, they just see a dude entertaining the rantings of Alex Jones.
They're fucking killing our kids, so you're telling me this real brand of fucking food and a goddamn fucking syrup.
But let me give you a personal allegory. In high school, I had a friend who was chill and fun to hang out with, and we shared a lot of laughs. But then I introduced him to my other friend and noticed he became more aggressive and antagonistic. Long story short, he was racist. Upon discovering this, I was put in the position of what do I do about it? Do I want to continue to associate myself with a racist? Is the only reason this person likes me is because I'm white? I had this experience again a couple of years ago when a coworker helped me move. We hired movers to help too, and when they showed up, he turned to me and said, "I fucking hate." Needless to say, I don't hang out with him anymore. The point is, an individual's character is affected by their chosen company. Bigotry and shit ideas should be challenged and should not be platformed as if their ideas were somehow worth entertaining. The moral of this story is, have some fucking standards. Maybe you're funny and fun to hang out with, but if they hang out with Ben Shapiro, then maybe they're not as chill as once thought.
And when he says 150 people were going to die and that was not proportionate, I don't know where this idiotic notion came from, that if you attack the United States, we are supposed to be proportionate in our response. The reason that people don't want to get involved with you in military conflict is because they are afraid you will devastate them. Not that you will gradually turn up the heat, but that you will devastate them.
I like Ben Shapiro. Let me just state this. I think people get the wrong impression about him all the time. I think he's a very nice guy.
If after this whole thing, you still listen to JRE, fine, not for me. Yes, DMT is pretty rad, but no amount of psychedelic experiences will allow you to transcend the mess we are all stuck in. Thank you to all of my patrons for making this video rant possible. Interbeings are for people who sign up at any tier on Patreon. Let me know what you think of this video in the comments, whether you agree with me or disagree with me. I'm feeling masochistic, so just give it to me. Like this video even if you didn't, and subscribe for weekly content. Trip safe everyone, and please get your vaccines to protect yourself and your community. Dolo out! There, I did it.
Yeah.